Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I could hear it drumming against the pack house roof even from here, tucked away in the smallest room on the 3rd floor. The one they gave to omegas and orphans like me. The scent of wet pine and earth seeped through the old window pane, mixing with the sharper smell of anxiety that clung to my skin. Tonight was the choosing ceremony, and every unmated wolf in the Silvercrest pack would gather in the Great Hall to witness our alpha select his Luna. Everyone knew who he would choose, everyone except him, apparently. I pressed my palm against my stomach, feeling the subtle flutter that had become constant over the past few weeks. The pack healer, old Margot, had confirmed it yesterday with knowing eyes and a pitying smile. Twins. I was carrying twins, and their father, our alpha, had no idea they existed. How could he, when he barely knew I existed? My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a girl with pale blonde hair pulled back too tightly, making my face look even thinner than usual. My eyes carried shadows underneath, not from sleeplessness, but from something deeper. A weariness that came from always being overlooked, always being the one chosen last, if chosen at all. The worn blue dress I'd found in the donation bin hung loose on my frame, hiding the small swell that would soon become impossible to conceal. I remembered my mother's last words before the fever took her when I was 12. Vera, being invisible isn't the same as being worthless. Sometimes the quietest hearts hold the loudest truths. She'd said it while braiding my hair, her fingers gentle despite the trembling sickness in them. I'd carried those words like a talisman ever since, even when the pack treated me like furniture, useful but unremarkable. The memory of that night 6 weeks ago still burned bright behind my closed eyelids. I'd been running patrol on the eastern border, the shift no one else wanted because it bordered the wild lands where rogues sometimes crossed. The moon had been full, fat and silver in a cloudless sky, and I'd felt more alive than I had in years. My wolf, smaller than most but quick and sure-footed, had reveled in the freedom of the forest. That's when his scent hit me, pine and smoke and something wild, something that made my wolf surge forward with recognition so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. Mate, the word had thundered through every cell in my body. I'd followed that scent like a lifeline, unable to stop myself even though I knew what I would find. Alpha Demon Ashford stood in a clearing, his massive dark form outlined by moonlight, and when he'd turned toward me, his eyes, those silver eyes that could command entire armies, had widened with the same shocked recognition. For one perfect crystalline moment, the mate bond had snapped into place between us like a lightning strike, bright and undeniable and terrifying. He'd shifted back to human form, and I'd done the same, both of us trembling and drawn together by something older than choice, older than reason. We hadn't spoken. Words would have broken whatever spell held us suspended in that impossible moment. His hands had found my face, my hair, pulling me close with a desperation that matched my own, and when he'd kissed me, I'd tasted his surprise and his hunger, and something that might have been relief. We'd come together on the forest floor with the kind of passion that leaves marks, the kind that comes from recognizing something you'd been searching for without knowing you'd been searching at all. He'd whispered my name, Vera, like he was trying to memorize it, trying to brand it into his memory. And I'd believed foolishly that everything would change. But when dawn came, he was gone. I'd waited 3 days before I finally saw him again, standing in the training yard surrounded by his inner circle, his beta, his gamma, his enforcers. He'd looked at me with polite confusion when I approached, as if trying to place where he'd seen me before. The mate bond hummed between us, undeniable, but he'd turned away to speak with someone more important, someone whose name he actually remembered. That's when I understood. Our alpha had felt the bond, but chosen to ignore it, and now, 6 weeks later, he was about to choose someone else entirely. A knock at my door pulled me from the spiral of memory. "Vera, you coming down?" It was Hannah, one of the younger wolves who worked in the kitchens. She was kind in that careless way people are when kindness costs them nothing. "In a minute," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. I could hear the great hall filling up below, the excited chatter of pack members dressed in their finest, the anticipation thick enough to taste. Through the walls, I caught fragments of conversation. "Sienna looks absolutely stunning. Of course he'll choose her. They've been inseparable. Strongest female warrior we've had in generations. Sienna Blackthorn. Beautiful. Powerful. Born to an elite family within the pack. She had everything I didn't. Status, strength, the kind of confidence that came from never having been invisible. She'd been training alongside demons since they were children, and everyone assumed their partnership was inevitable. She probably even believed they were meant to be together. She just didn't know about the mate bond that fate had decided to play as a cosmic joke. I made my way downstairs, keeping to the edges of the hallway where people wouldn't notice me. The great hall had been transformed for the ceremony. Candles everywhere, creating pools of golden light that danced across the stone walls. The pack's history was carved into those walls. Generations of alphas and lunas whose names and deeds would be remembered long after they'd returned to the earth. Would my children's names ever be carved there? Would anyone even know they were his? I found a spot in the back, partially hidden behind a thick stone column. From here, I could see the raised platform where Demon stood, imposing in black ceremonial clothes that made him look like a king from ancient times. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, revealing the sharp angles of his jaw and cheekbones. Even from this distance, I could feel the mate bond pulling at me, a physical ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. His beta, a wolf named Garrett with copper-red hair and an easy smile, stood to his right. They were speaking in low tones, but I could see the tension in Demon's shoulders, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh. A nervous habit I'd noticed during pack meetings. Was he nervous about choosing Sienna? Or was he feeling the bond, even now, pulling his attention away from the woman everyone expected him to claim? The elder, a white-haired wolf named Tobias, who'd served 3 generations of alphas, stepped forward and raised his hands. The crowd fell silent instantly. "Tonight, we gather for one of our most sacred traditions," Tobias began, his voice carrying the weight of ritual. "The choosing of the Luna, the female who will stand beside our alpha, who will lead alongside him, who will mother the next generation of Silvercrest wolves." Each word felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. I watched as Sienna was led forward by her father, the pack's head enforcer. She wore deep red, the color of power and passion, and she moved with the grace of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. When she reached the platform and stood before Demon, even I had to admit they looked like they belonged together. 2 perfect pieces of pack royalty. Strong and beautiful and wholly suitable. Demon's jaw tightened as he looked at her. I could see him fighting something, some internal war that played out in the tensing of his shoulders and the flash of silver in his eyes. His wolf was close to the surface. "Alpha Demon Ashford," Elder Tobias intoned, "do you choose this woman, Sienna Blackthorn, as your Luna? Will you bind yourself to her before the moon goddess and this pack?" The silence stretched. Someone in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. I could feel my heart hammering so hard I was certain everyone could hear it. Demon opened his mouth to speak, and then his eyes found me in the shadows. The world stopped. The mate bond flared between us like a living thing, and I saw his pupils dilate, saw his breath catch in his chest. For 3 heartbeats, we stared at each other across the crowded hall, and I felt everything, his confusion, his desire, his fear, and underneath it all, the recognition that he'd been trying so hard to bury. But then Sienna touched his arm, a possessive gesture that broke whatever spell had held him, and Demon turned back to her. When he spoke, his voice was firm and clear and absolutely devastating. "I do. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Somewhere, musicians began to play. Sienna was beaming, tears of joy streaming down her perfect face as Demon pulled her close and kissed her. A performative kiss, I realized. One that looked right, but felt wrong even from this distance. I couldn't breathe. The column was the only thing keeping me upright as I watched the pack swarm the platform, congratulating their new Luna, celebrating a union that should have never happened. My hand found my stomach again, protective, desperate. Hannah appeared at my elbow, her face sympathetic. "You okay? You look like you're going to be sick." "Just need some air," I managed, already moving toward the exit. The walls felt like they were closing in, the smell of too many bodies and too much perfume making my stomach churn, or maybe that was just the morning sickness that came and went at inconvenient times. I made it outside just as the sky opened up, rain pouring down in sheets that soaked through my thin dress in seconds. I didn't care. The cold water felt cleansing, like it might wash away the image of Demon claiming another woman as his, while his children grew inside me. "You're going to catch your death." I spun around, and there he was, Demon, standing in the doorway of the pack house, backlit by the warm glow from inside. He'd followed me. Why had he followed me? "Congratulations, Alpha," I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. "Your Luna is very beautiful." He flinched at that, actually flinched, and took a step toward me. "Vera, don't." I held up a hand, stopping him. "You made your choice. You've been making it every day for 6 weeks. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Years of being overlooked finally finding their voice. "I understand that fate gave you a mate, and you decided she wasn't good enough, that I wasn't good enough." Thunder rolled across the sky, and in the flash of lightning I saw his face clearly. The anguish there, the conflict, the desperate need to explain something that had no explanation. The mate bond was screaming between us now, both of our wolves demanding recognition, demanding their rightful claim. "It's not about good enough," he said roughly. "Sienna and I were promised to each other since we were children. Her family, my family. There are alliances, agreements, things that go back generations. I can't just..." "Can't or won't?" I asked quietly. He had no answer for that. I turned to walk away, but his voice stopped me. "What are you not telling me?" My heart seized. Could he sense it? Could he somehow feel the life growing inside me? The 2 small heartbeats that were hidden but not gone. "Nothing that matters now," I said. "Enjoy your ceremony, Alpha. I hope she makes you very happy." I walked away into the rain, leaving my mate, the father of my unborn children, standing in the doorway of a life I would never be part of. Behind me, I could hear the celebration continuing, the pack rejoicing in a union blessed by politics and tradition, but cursed by fate. And I understood, with a clarity that hurt worse than rejection, that I was truly alone in this. Whatever happened next, whatever choices I had to make for these babies, I would be making them without him. The rain washed away my tears, but it couldn't wash away the truth. I was carrying the Alpha's children, and he'd just chosen another woman to be his Luna. The morning sickness hit me hardest at dawn. I'd learned to keep a basin by my bed, to move quietly, so the other Omegas in the neighboring rooms wouldn't hear me retching into the porcelain. But this morning, 3 days after the choosing ceremony, my stomach rebelled with such violence that I barely made it to the shared bathroom down the hall before losing what little I'd managed to eat the night before. "You need to see the healer again," whispered a voice behind me. I looked up to find Margot standing in the doorway, her weathered face creased with concern. The old wolf had been the pack healer for 40 years, and very little escaped her notice. She held out a damp cloth, which I took gratefully. "I'm fine," I lied, wiping my mouth. "Just a stomach bug." Margot's pale blue eyes, so faded with age they were almost white, fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity. "Those babies won't stay hidden much longer, child. You're what, 8 weeks now? In another month, maybe less, everyone will know." The words hung between us like a death sentence. She was right, of course. My dresses were already getting tight around the middle, and soon no amount of loose clothing would disguise the swell of my stomach. What am I supposed to do? The question came out smaller than I intended. the voice of a frightened girl rather than a woman about to become a mother. He chose Sienna. The pack accepts her as Luna. If I come forward now, you'll be called a liar, Margot finished bluntly. Or worse, they'll believe you and call you a homewrecker. The Blackthorn family has powerful allies, child. They won't take kindly to anyone threatening their daughter's position. I pressed my forehead against the cool tile wall, fighting another wave of nausea. Then what do? Margot was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a sadness that made my chest tight. You could leave. I have a sister in the Clearwater Pack, 3 territories north. She'd take you in, no questions asked. You could have the babies there, raise them away from all this politics and pain. Leave. The word echoed in my mind like a bell. Leave the only home I'd ever known. The pack where my parents were buried, the forests where my wolf ran free. Leave and raise my children as rogues, without a pack's protection, without their father ever knowing they existed. But what was the alternative? Stay and watch Demon build a life with Sienna? Watch him father other children, legitimate children, with a woman who wasn't his mate? Feel the bond between us fray and tear with each passing day, until it became just another wound I carried? I need time to think, I said finally. Margot nodded, squeezing my shoulder with a gentle hand. Don't take too long. The longer you wait, the harder it gets, for you and for them. She patted my still flat stomach meaningfully before slipping out of the bathroom, leaving me alone with my reflection and my impossible choices. I cleaned myself up and made my way down to the kitchens. Even pregnant and miserable, I still had duties. The pack didn't stop needing meals just because my world had collapsed. Hannah was already there, kneading dough for the morning bread, flour dusting her dark hair like snow. You look terrible, she said cheerfully. No offense. None taken. I tied an apron around my waist and started chopping vegetables for the breakfast stew. The repetitive motion was soothing, something to focus on besides the chaos in my head. How was the celebration last night? Hannah's eyes lit up. She loved gossip almost as much as she loved baking. Oh, it was beautiful. They danced until almost midnight, and Alpha Demon gave Sienna this gorgeous necklace, sapphires the size of my thumb. She looked like a queen. She paused, seeming to remember who she was talking to. Sorry. I know you're not really into all the ceremony stuff. If only she knew. I forced a smile. It's fine. I'm happy for them. The lie tasted bitter, but Hannah accepted it with a satisfied nod and launched into a detailed description of the feast, the decorations, the toasts given in the new Luna's honor. I half listened, focusing instead on the steady rhythm of the knife against the cutting board. Carrots, onions, potatoes. Simple, uncomplicated things that didn't require impossible decisions. The kitchen door swung open, and I felt him before I saw him. The mate bond pulled tight, making my hands still on the knife. Demon stood in the doorway, his silver eyes sweeping the room until they landed on me. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles shadowing his eyes, his hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Hannah immediately dropped into a respectful bow. Alpha, can I get you something? Coffee, he said, his gaze never leaving my face. And I need to speak with Vera, alone. My heart lurched. Hannah shot me a curious look, but quickly gathered her things and left, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. I turned back to my vegetables, refusing to meet his eyes. You shouldn't be here. If someone sees, I don't care. His voice was rough, strained. He crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, stopping on the other side of the wooden work table. We need to talk about what happened, about us. There is no us, I said, proud of how steady I sounded. You made that very clear at the ceremony. Damn it, Vera! He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I wanted any of this? I finally looked up at him, and the anguish in his face nearly broke my resolve. He looked tortured, caught between duty and desire, and I hated that part of me wanted to comfort him. What you want doesn't matter anymore. You chose your Luna. Your mate, your real mate, is just collateral damage. You're my mate, he said fiercely. My wolf knows it. I know it. Every time I'm near you, it feels like my chest is being ripped open. Then why? The question burst out of me, raw and desperate. Why choose her when you knew, when you felt? Because I'm alpha. The words came out as almost a roar. Because I have responsibilities that go beyond what I want or what fate decided in some cosmic joke. Sienna's family controls half our trading routes. Her father commands our largest fighting force. The alliance between our families has kept this pack safe for 3 generations. If I break that engagement, if I choose an Omega with no family, no connections, no value, I finished quietly. That's not what I meant, but it's what you believe. I set down the knife carefully, my hands trembling. I'm not good enough to risk your precious alliance over. Not worth the political inconvenience. Demon moved around the table, reaching for me, but I stepped back. If he touched me, if I felt his skin against mine, I would break. And I couldn't afford to break, not with 2 lives depending on me now. Don't, I whispered. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Something shifted in his expression, a new awareness creeping in. What aren't you telling me? That night in the rain, I asked you the same thing. There's something... The kitchen door banged open, and we both jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Garrett, Demon's beta, stood in the doorway, his copper hair windblown and his face grim. Alpha, we have a problem. Rogues hit the southern border. 3 families attacked, 2 dead, 5 injured. We need you now. Demon's entire demeanor shifted. The personal crisis shelved as the Alpha took over. How many rogues? Scout reports at least 20, maybe more. They're organized, Demon. This isn't random. Gather the enforcers. Full defense protocols. Demon was already moving toward the door, his mind clearly on strategy and protection, but at the threshold he turned back to look at me. And the raw need in his eyes made my breath catch. This conversation isn't over. Then he was gone, Garrett following, leaving me alone in the kitchen with half-chopped vegetables and a secret that grew heavier by the minute. I pressed my hand to my stomach, feeling the flutter that had become constant. Your father is an idiot, I whispered to the babies I couldn't yet feel kick. But he's trying, I think. The words felt hollow even as I said them. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. The rogue attack had put the entire pack on high alert. Warriors came and went from the pack house, grabbing quick meals between patrols. I heard fragments of conversation. The rogues had been unusually bold, attacking in daylight, targeting families rather than just challenging border guards. It didn't follow normal rogue patterns, and that made everyone nervous. By evening, I was exhausted. The constant nausea, combined with the emotional turmoil of Demon's visit, had drained what little energy I had. I was heading back to my room when I heard voices coming from the Alpha's office. Voices raised in argument. I should have kept walking, should have minded my business and gone to bed. But I heard my name, and my feet stopped of their own accord. Can't ignore the mate bond forever, Demon. That was Garrett, his usually easy tone sharp with frustration. Your wolf is barely under control. You're distracted, making mistakes. Today at the border, you nearly got yourself killed because you weren't focused. I'm handling it. Demon's voice was tight. By handling it, you mean choosing Sienna and pretending your actual mate doesn't exist? Another voice. This one female, sharp and commanding. I recognized it as Nora, the pack's head strategist, and one of the few wolves who didn't seem to fear contradicting the Alpha. That's not handling it. That's running from it. Watch your tone, Nora. Or what? You'll add me to the list of inconvenient truths you're ignoring? A pause. The Blackthorns are already suspicious. Sienna might be basking in her new title, but her father isn't stupid. He can sense something's off with you. The Alliance means nothing if you're too distracted to lead, Garrett cut in. And it definitely means nothing if you and your wolf tear each other apart from the inside. I've seen what rejecting a mate bond does, Demon. It's not pretty, and it's not survivable long-term. Silence. Then Demon. So quietly, I almost couldn't hear. What would you have me do? Break Sienna's heart? Insult her family? Risk everything my father and grandfather built for your mate? Nora finished. For the woman fate chose for you. For the bond that's sacred to every wolf who's ever lived. She's an Omega. She has no family, no influence, nothing to offer the pack politically. She has you, Garrett said simply, and apparently that's not enough for her to matter. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and fled down the hallway, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. His words echoed in my head. Nothing to offer the pack politically. As if my worth could be measured in alliances and trade agreements. As if the mate bond, the most sacred thing in our culture, was just another political inconvenience to be managed. I made it to my room and locked the door, sliding down against it until I sat on the floor, my arms wrapped around my knees. The babies fluttered again, as if sensing my distress, and I forced myself to breathe slowly, to calm down for their sake, if not my own. Margot's offer echoed in my mind. Leave. Go north to the Clearwater Pack. Raise my children away from a father who saw them, saw me, as nothing more than a political liability. Could I do it? Could I really leave everything behind? My mother's voice whispered through memory. Being invisible isn't the same as being worthless. But what if you're invisible precisely because everyone around you has decided you're worthless? A soft knock at my door made me freeze. Vera? Hannah's voice, tentative. You okay? I heard you come up the stairs pretty fast. I wiped my eyes and stood, unlocking the door but not opening it. I'm fine. Just tired. Okay. Well, there's a pack meeting tomorrow night. Mandatory attendance. Alpha wants everyone there to discuss the rogue situation. A pause. You'll come, right? I'll be there. I promised. Though the thought of facing Demon and Sienna together in front of the entire pack made me want to hide in this room forever. After Hannah left, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, my hands resting on my stomach. Tomorrow I would attend the pack meeting. I would watch Demon stand beside his chosen Luna and pretend that everything was fine, and then, after that, I would make my decision. Stay and be nothing. Or leave and be everything to the two small lives that depended only on me. The rain started again, a soft patter against the window that sounded like tears. The great hall was packed tighter than I'd ever seen it. Every wolf in the Silvercrest pack had answered the Alpha's summons, crowding into the stone chamber until the air felt thick and hot despite the rain-cooled evening outside. I'd positioned myself in my usual spot, back corner, partially hidden by the crowd. But tonight it felt different. Tonight, every whispered conversation seemed to be about survival, about fear, about the rogues who'd grown bold enough to attack families in broad daylight. Demon stood on the platform with Sienna at his side, exactly where a Luna should be. She wore her authority like she'd been born to it, standing tall in deep green that made her look regal and untouchable. Her hand rested possessively on Demon's arm, and I hated the spike of jealousy that shot through me at the casual intimacy of the gesture. This was my life now, watching from the shadows while another woman claimed what should have been mine. Garrett stood on Demon's other side, his expression grim as he surveyed the assembled pack. Nora was there too, along with the Blackthorn patriarch, Sienna's father, a massive wolf with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. The Council of Elders formed a semicircle behind them, their weathered faces grave. Elder Tobias stepped forward, raising his hands for silence. The chatter died immediately. 3 days ago, our southern border was breached, he began, his voice carrying easily through the hushed crowd. 23 rogues, organized and armed, attacked 3 family homes. 2 of our own were lost, Marcus Whitepaw and his son Daniel. 5 others were injured, some critically. A murmur of anger and grief rippled through the pack. I'd known Marcus, a kind older wolf who'd always had a smile for the Omegas, who'd never made us feel less than. The news of his death hit harder than I'd expected. A reminder that the danger was real and growing. This isn't normal rogue behavior. Garrett spoke up, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Rogues are typically solitary, desperate. They might steal or cause trouble, but coordinated attacks on families? That's something else entirely. That's organized. That's planned. Which means someone's leading them, Demon said, and the alpha command in his voice made every wolf in the room straighten instinctively. Someone's building an army on our borders, and they're testing our defenses. Sienna leaned forward, her voice clear and confident. We should strike first, send our warriors into the wildlands, hunt them down before they can attack again. Several of the younger warriors voiced their agreement, the call for action spreading like wildfire. But I noticed Nora shaking her head, and Elder Tobias looked troubled. A bold strategy, the elder said carefully, but risky. The wild lands are vast, and we'd be spreading our forces thin. If this is indeed an organized group, they might be trying to draw us out, leave our territory vulnerable. So we do nothing? Challenged Sienna's father, his voice booming. We let them pick off our families one by one while we cower behind our borders? I didn't say that, Rowan. Tobias's tone sharpened. I said we must be strategic. Rushing into the wild lands without understanding what we're facing could cost us everything. The argument escalated, voices rising as wolves divided into camps, those who wanted immediate action and those who counseled caution. I watched Demon's face, saw the tension in his jaw as he tried to balance the competing demands of his pack. His eyes kept scanning the crowd, and twice they found me before he forced his gaze away. The mate bond pulled at me every time our eyes met, a physical ache that made it hard to breathe. I wondered if he felt it too, if it distracted him the way it distracted me, if his wolf was as restless as mine. Enough! Demon's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Instant silence. We will increase border patrols, double the guards on all family homes within 5 miles of the perimeter. Garrett, I want scouts in the wild lands, small, fast teams that can gather intelligence without engaging. We need to know what we're dealing with before we commit to any major action. It was a compromise. Neither the aggressive assault Sienna's faction wanted nor the complete caution the elders advised. But it was leadership, clear and decisive, and I could see the pack responding to it, the tension easing slightly as they looked to their alpha for direction. In the meantime, Demon continued, we need to strengthen our defenses here. Nora will coordinate. He stopped mid-sentence, his entire body going rigid. His nostrils flared, and I saw his eyes flash silver as his wolf surged close to the surface. He was scenting something, tracking something through the crowd. His gaze locked on me with laser focus, and I saw the exact moment realization hit him. His expression shifted from confusion to shock, to something that looked almost like panic. Around us, wolves were starting to notice the alpha's strange behavior, following his line of sight to where I stood frozen in the back corner. Could he smell it? Could he sense the pregnancy through the mate bond? Sienna tugged on his arm, her voice sharp. Demon? What's wrong? He tore his gaze away from me with visible effort, shaking his head as if to clear it. Nothing. I'm fine. But his voice was strained, and I could see Garrett watching him with concern. Nora will coordinate the defense improvements. Council, meet with me tomorrow to finalize our strategy. Everyone else, stay alert, stay together, and report anything unusual immediately. Dismissed. The pack began to disperse, but I didn't wait. I pushed through the crowd toward the exit, needing to get away before Demon could corner me, before those silver eyes could pin me down and demand answers I wasn't ready to give. I almost made it. Vera, wait. His voice stopped me just outside the hall, and I felt his presence behind me like a physical weight. Please. I turned slowly, preparing for confrontation, but the look on his face stole the defensive words from my tongue. He looked shattered, his usual confidence completely gone, replaced by something raw and desperate. Are you... He stopped, started again. Is there something you need to tell me? My hand moved instinctively to my stomach before I could stop it, and I saw his eyes track the movement. His face went pale. How long? The question came out barely above a whisper. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't do this here. How long, Vera? 8 weeks. The words felt like a betrayal, like giving up a secret I'd meant to carry alone. Since that night in the forest. Since before you chose her. He staggered back as if I'd hit him, one hand coming up to grip his hair. Moon goddess, why didn't you tell me? When? The anger I'd been holding back finally broke free. When you avoided me for 3 days after we mated? When you stood on that platform and chose Sienna in front of the entire pack? When you made it crystal clear that an Omega with nothing to offer politically wasn't worth disrupting your precious alliance? That's not fair. Fair, I laughed, and it came out bitter and broken. Nothing about this is fair, Demon. You're standing here acting shocked. But you knew. You felt the bond. You knew what we were to each other, and you chose to ignore it. You don't get to be surprised that there were consequences. Consequences. He repeated the word like it was foreign to him. You're calling our children consequences? I'm calling them mine, I said fiercely. Because that's what they are. Mine to protect, mine to raise, mine to love. You made your choice. You don't get to suddenly decide you want to be involved now that it's real. Before he could respond, Sienna's voice cut through the tension. Demon? What's going on? She appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from confusion to suspicion as she took in the scene, her mate standing too close to an Omega, both of us clearly in the middle of an intense conversation. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at me, and I saw the exact moment she registered my hand still resting protectively over my stomach. Nothing, Demon said quickly, too quickly. Just discussing the rogue situation. The rogue situation. Sienna's voice was flat, disbelieving. She moved to stand beside Demon, her posture territorial. It looked rather personal for a discussion about security. I could have left it there, could have let Demon's lie stand, slipped away into the shadows where I belonged, but something in Sienna's dismissive tone, the way she looked at me like I was an insect she wanted to crush, made my spine straighten. The Alpha was asking about my patrol schedule, I said, meeting her eyes directly for the first time ever. Since I cover the eastern border, where the rogues seem most active. It wasn't technically a lie. Demon had never asked about my patrol schedule, but I did cover the eastern border. Sienna's expression suggested she didn't quite believe me, but she couldn't call me a liar without evidence. How considerate, she said, her smile sharp as a knife. Though I'm sure the Alpha has more important matters to attend to than individual patrol schedules. Don't you, darling? The possessive term made my stomach churn, but I kept my face neutral as Demon nodded stiffly. Of course. Vera, we'll discuss your patrol assignment later, through proper channels. The dismissal was clear. I nodded once and walked away, feeling their eyes on my back until I turned the corner. Only then did I let myself lean against the wall, my legs shaking so badly I wasn't sure they'd hold me. He knew. Demon knew about the babies, and that changed everything, or maybe it changed nothing at all. He was still mated to Sienna, still bound by his political alliance. Still the Alpha who'd decided an Omega wasn't worth the trouble. I made my way back to my room, my mind spinning with the implications of what had just happened. Would he tell Sienna? Would he demand some kind of involvement with the children? Or would he continue to pretend I didn't exist, adding our babies to the list of inconvenient truths he was determined to ignore? Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Demon's face when he'd realized. The shock, the fear, and underneath it all, something that might have been hope. But hope for what? That I'd quietly disappear? That he could have his Luna and his secret mate both? Dawn came gray and cold, rain still falling in steady sheets. I dragged myself out of bed and down to the kitchens, where Hannah was already pulling fresh bread from the oven. She took one look at me and shook her head. You need to see Margot again. You look half dead, Vera. I'm fine. You're not fine. You haven't been fine for weeks. She set down the bread and crossed her arms. Look, I know it's none of my business, but people are starting to talk. About you. About how sick you've been. How tired you look. About... She gestured vaguely at my midsection. My blood ran cold. What are people saying? Nothing specific. Just that something's off. Hannah's expression softened. Whatever's going on, you need help. You can't do this alone, whatever this is. Before I could respond, Margot appeared in the doorway, her weathered face set in determined lines. Vera, my office, now. It wasn't a request. I followed the old healer through the winding corridors to her small workspace, a room that smelled like herbs and old magic. She closed the door firmly and turned to face me. Alpha Demon came to see me an hour ago, she said without preamble, demanded to know if what he suspected was true. I told him it wasn't my place to confirm or deny another wolf's medical condition without permission. Thank you. Don't thank me yet." Margot's expression was troubled. "He'll be back, child. And he'll keep pushing until he gets answers." The mate bond is eating at him. I could see it in his eyes. "You can't hide this much longer." "I'm not trying to hide it," I said, though that was exactly what I'd been doing. "I'm just trying to figure out what to do. Margot, if I stay here, if people find out the Alpha's true mate is pregnant with his children while he's mated to someone else, it'll cause chaos," she finished bluntly. "The Blackthorns will be furious. Some will call for you to be exiled. Others will demand Demon reject Sienna and honor the mate bond. The pack will fracture right when it needs to be unified against the rogue threat. So I should leave. I think you should choose." Margot moved to her desk, pulling out a sealed envelope. "This is a letter to my sister in Clearwater. She'll take you in, help you through the pregnancy and beyond. You'd be safe there, and your children would grow up protected." She paused. "But you'd be giving up your mate, permanently. Once you leave, once you raise those children away from him, there's no coming back from that. The bond might never fully break, but it'll scar over. You'll spend the rest of your life knowing what you walked away from." I took the letter with trembling hands. "And if I stay, then you fight. For yourself, for your children, for your place beside your mate, even if he's too much of a coward to claim you properly." The old wolf's eyes glinted with something fierce. "But that's a different kind of hard, Vera. That's standing up to wolves who have power and wealth and influence. That's becoming visible when you've spent your whole life learning to disappear." My mother's words echoed again. Being invisible isn't the same as being worthless. But maybe it was time to stop being invisible altogether. "I need more time," I whispered. "You have until you start showing," Margot said gently. After that, the choice makes itself. I left her office with the letter tucked into my pocket, and a decision weighing on my shoulders like chains. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and smelling of wet earth and new growth. I found myself walking toward the forest's edge, needing the space and silence to think. The Eastern Border Patrol path was familiar under my feet, and my wolf stirred with pleasure at being near the trees. This was where I'd first caught Demon's scent, where the mate bond had snapped into place and changed everything. If I left, I'd never run these paths again, never feel the Silvercrest territory beneath my paws, never. A scent hit me. Foreign. Wrong. Rogues. I froze, every instinct screaming danger. They were close, too close, on packland, well past the border. My hand went to the emergency whistle every patrol wolf carried, but before I could blow it, a hand clamped over my mouth and I was dragged backward into the undergrowth. The hand over my mouth reeked of dirt and sweat, and something rancid that made my wolf recoil in disgust. "Quiet, little Omega," a voice rasped in my ear, breath hot against my neck. "Make a sound, and I'll snap that pretty throat." Terror flooded my system, but underneath it, a fierce protective instinct roared to life. My babies. I had to protect my babies. I went limp in my attacker's grip, feigning submission while my mind raced through options. There were at least 3 of them. I could smell the others circling closer through the undergrowth, predators closing in on wounded prey. "She's the one from the pack house," another voice said. This one female and sharp. "I saw her last night at that meeting. Nobody important. Nobody important." The words might have stung if I hadn't been too busy trying to survive. "Check her for weapons," the first voice commanded. Rough hands patted me down, and I felt the emergency whistle being yanked from my belt. My only way to call for help, gone. But they missed the small knife I kept strapped to my ankle, a gift from my father before he died. Too small to be much of a weapon, but better than nothing. "Clean," the female reported. "What do we do with her?" "Take her. She'll make decent leverage if we need it." They started dragging me deeper into the forest, away from packlands and safety. My mind screamed at me to fight, to shift, to do something, but I forced myself to stay calm. Panic would get me killed. Panic would get my children killed. I needed to think, to wait for an opening. We'd gone maybe a quarter mile when I heard it. The long, haunting howl of a wolf calling alarm. Someone had found my scent trail, realized I was missing. The rogues heard it too, and cursed, picking up their pace. "Faster. We need to get her across the river before they track us." The river. That was their plan. Cross into truly wild territory where pack wolves rarely ventured, where the current would wash away our scent trail. I had to act now, before they got me that far. I let my body sag completely, becoming dead weight. The rogue holding me stumbled, his grip loosening for just a second. It was enough. I twisted, driving my elbow into his solar plexus with every ounce of strength I had. He gasped and released me, and I hit the ground running. "Get her!" the female snarled. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. Behind me, I could hear them shifting, the distinctive crack of bones reshaping. They'd be faster in wolf form, but so would I. I let the change take me mid-stride, my clothes shredding as fur erupted across my skin, and my body compressed and reformed. My wolf was small. I'd always been self-conscious about that. But she was quick, and knew these woods like the back of her paw. We darted between trees, leaped over fallen logs, putting distance between us and our pursuers. But I could hear them gaining, 3 sets of paws thundering through the forest. Another howl split the air, closer this time, and this one I recognized, deep and commanding, laced with fury and fear. Demon, he was coming. The rogues heard it too, and I felt their hesitation, their pace faltering. They hadn't expected the alpha himself to respond. Most alphas would send warriors, not come themselves. But Demon wasn't most alphas, and through the mate bond, he would have felt my terror the moment those hands grabbed me. A massive gray wolf burst from the undergrowth ahead of me, one of the rogues, cutting off my escape. I skidded to a halt, trapped between this one and the 2 behind me. The gray wolf's lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing teeth stained yellow. He was twice my size, scarred and vicious-looking. "Protect the babies," my wolf whispered urgently. "Whatever happens, protect them." The gray wolf lunged. I dodged left, but one of the others caught me, jaws clamping onto my hind leg. Pain exploded white-hot, and I yelped despite myself. Blood, hot and wet, matted my fur. I twisted, snapping at my attacker's face, and managed to catch his ear. He released me with a snarl, then the forest exploded with pack wolves. Demon came first, a massive black wolf with silver eyes that glowed with alpha fury. He hit the gray rogue like a freight train, and they went down in a tangle of snapping jaws and flying fur. Garrett was right behind him, his copper-red wolf taking on the female rogue. More pack warriors poured in. I recognized Nora's sleek brown form, and several of the younger enforcers. The battle was brutal and fast. The rogues, outnumbered and facing an enraged alpha, didn't stand a chance. Within minutes, 2 were down, and the 3rd was fleeing into the wildlands with Nora and 2 warriors in pursuit. I stood on 3 legs, my injured hind leg held awkwardly, watching as Demon shifted back to human form. He was breathing hard, blood, not his own, splattered across his chest. His silver eyes found me immediately, and the naked relief in them made my chest ache. "Vera." He started toward me, but I backed up, my wolf still too frightened and hurt to accept comfort even from our mate. "Let me see. Let me..." I shifted back, gasping as the change sent fresh waves of agony through my injured leg. Naked and bleeding, I pressed myself against a tree trunk for support. "I'm fine. You're bleeding." His voice was rough with barely controlled emotion. "And you're most definitely not fine." Garrett shifted back, tactfully looking away as he addressed Demon. "Alpha, we should get her to Margot. That bite looks deep." Other wolves were arriving now, drawn by the alarm howls. I saw Hannah's shocked face in the crowd, saw several warriors staring at me with new awareness. The Omega who'd been attacked, who'd managed to hold off 3 rogues long enough for help to arrive. Sienna pushed through the gathered wolves, her expression dark as she took in the scene. Her mate, shirtless and covered in blood, hovering over a naked, injured Omega with obvious concern. "What happened?" she demanded. "Rogues on Packland," Garrett answered when Demon remained focused on me. "They grabbed Vera near the eastern border, tried to take her into the wildlands. We tracked them just in time." "Why would rogues want her?" Sienna's eyes narrowed. "She's nobody. She's Pack," Demon cut her off, his voice sharp enough to make several wolves flinch. "That makes her somebody worth protecting." He finally tore his gaze from me to address the gathered warriors, Someone get clothes and clear this area. I want 3 teams sweeping the borders. Find out how they got this deep into our territory without being detected. The crowd began to disperse, though I could feel their curious stares. Hannah rushed forward with her own jacket, helping me cover myself while carefully avoiding my injured leg. The kindness in her eyes told me she'd put together pieces of a puzzle I'd been trying to hide. "Can you walk?" Demon asked, his tone gentler now. "I can manage." But when I tried to put weight on my leg, it buckled. Strong arms caught me before I hit the ground, and I found myself pressed against Demon's bare chest, his heart hammering against my ear. "Don't be stubborn," he murmured. "Not about this." He lifted me easily, cradling me against him like I weighed nothing. The mate bond sang at the contact, pleasure mixing with pain in a confusing swirl. My wolf wanted to purr and lean into his strength. My human side wanted to push away, to maintain the distance he'd created when he chose Sienna. "I can walk," I protested weakly. "No, you can't." He started toward the pack house, his long strides eating up the ground. "And even if you could, I'm not letting you." Sienna fell into step beside us, her jaw tight. "This is hardly appropriate, Demon. Let one of the warriors carry her." "No." The single word carried absolute alpha authority, closing the discussion. We made it to Margot's office, where the old healer was already laying out supplies with practiced efficiency. She took one look at my leg and tisked. "On the table, and everyone else out except who I say can stay." "I'm staying," Demon said firmly. "I assumed you would." Margot's knowing look made my cheeks burn. "The rest of you, out." "Yes, Luna, that includes you. I don't need a crowd while I'm working." Sienna's face flushed with anger, but she couldn't directly countermand the healer without looking petty. She shot me a look that promised we'd talk later. A talk I very much did not want to have, before sweeping out of the room. Margot closed the door and turned to examine my leg, her weathered hands surprisingly gentle as she probed the wound. "Bite went deep, but it missed the major blood vessels. You were lucky." "Doesn't feel lucky," I managed through gritted teeth as she cleaned the wound with something that burned like liquid fire. "Lucky you're Wolf," she corrected. "This'll heal in a few days with proper care. Lucky the pups weren't harmed. Lucky your mate has a good nose and came running when you needed him." Demon went very still beside me. "Pups? As in, plural?" Margot glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. "You didn't tell him?" "I told him I was pregnant. The twins part hadn't come up yet." "Twins." Demon's voice was barely audible. He sank into a chair like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. "You're carrying twins. Congratulations," Margot said dryly as she began stitching my leg closed. "Though your timing could use work, Alpha. Choosing another Luna while your true mate carries your children. That's a special kind of foolish." "Margot," I started, but she cut me off. "No, child." "Someone needs to say it." She turned her sharp gaze on Demon. "You've made a mess, Alpha. A political mess, a personal mess, and now those rogues know something's unusual about this Omega. Unusual enough to try kidnapping her in broad daylight. They were organized. They knew where to find her. This wasn't random. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They were watching. During the pack meeting, that female rogue said she saw me there. Which means they're scouting our territory, learning our routines, identifying targets. Demon's voice had gone cold with fury. This wasn't just a random attack. They were specifically looking for vulnerable pack members. Or specific pack members, Margot corrected, finishing her stitching and beginning to wrap my leg in clean bandages. "Think about it. Why grab an Omega? We're not warriors, not politically important. Unless they knew," I finished quietly. "Knew about the pregnancy, about who the father is." Demon was on his feet instantly. "That's impossible. Nobody knows except us and Margot. And anyone with a decent nose who's been paying attention," Margot countered. "You think wolves haven't noticed their Alpha can't keep his eyes off one particular Omega? That he goes tense every time she's near? The mate bond might be something you're trying to ignore, boy. But it's not invisible. If the rogues know about the pregnancy, if they know the babies are mine..." Demon's face had gone pale. "They took her for leverage. They'd have demanded ransom, or threaten the children, or worse. Margot agreed grimly. Which means Vera can't stay in that little room on the 3rd floor anymore. She needs protection. Constant protection. She'll stay in the Alpha Wing, Demon said immediately. My quarters have the best security and... Absolutely not. I tried to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. I'm not staying in your quarters while you're mated to Sienna. That's insane. I don't care how it looks. Well, I do. The words burst out of me with more force than I'd intended. You made your choice, Demon. You stood in front of the entire pack and chose her. You don't get to suddenly play protective mate now because it's convenient. Convenient? He looked genuinely shocked. You think this is about convenience? You were almost taken, Vera. Our children were almost... He couldn't finish the sentence, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Your children with the Omega you've been pretending doesn't exist, I shot back. The one with nothing to offer politically, remember? Margot cleared her throat. As touching as this lover's quarrel is, we have a practical problem. Vera does need protection, whether she wants to admit it or not. But the Alpha's right. Putting her in his quarters while he's mated to someone else would cause an uproar. Then I'll leave, I said. Your sister in Clearwater, the offer still stands? No. Demon's voice was hard as steel. You're not leaving pack territory, not with rogues actively hunting you. You can't order me to stay. I'm your Alpha. I absolutely can. And I'm your mate, which you've been happy to ignore when it suited you. I was shouting now, 3 weeks of hurt and anger finally spilling over. You don't get to pick and choose when the bond matters, Demon. Either I matter enough to claim properly, or I don't matter at all. You can't have it both ways. The silence that followed was deafening. Demon stared at me like I'd struck him, his chest heaving with emotion. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. You matter. Moon Goddess Vera, you matter more than you could possibly know. But this situation, the alliance with the Blackthorns, my responsibilities as Alpha, the rogue threat, it's complicated. Then uncomplicate it, I said quietly. Make a choice. A real one this time, because I won't raise our children in the shadows, wondering if their father is ashamed of them. I won't be the secret you keep hidden while you build a life with someone else. I deserve better than that. They deserve better than that. Margot watched us both with ancient, knowing eyes. The girl's right, Alpha. You can't keep straddling this fence. Eventually, you're going to have to jump one way or the other. Question is, which way will hurt less? Breaking a political alliance, or breaking the most sacred bond our kind knows? Before Demon could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway outside. Raised voices, Sienna's among them, sharp with anger. The door burst open, and the new Luna stormed in with her father right behind her. Enough, Sienna announced, her voice ringing with authority. I want to know what's going on, right now. Why are you holed up with this Omega demon? Why does she warrant the Alpha's personal protection? And why... Her eyes dropped to my bandaged leg, then rose to my face with dawning suspicion. Why do I get the feeling there's something everyone's hiding from me? Rowan Blackthorn's expression was harder, more calculating. My daughter raises valid questions, Alpha. This Omega has been receiving unusual attention from you for weeks now. The pack is starting to talk. If there's something we should know, now would be the time to share it. Demon looked at me, and I saw the moment of decision in his eyes. The same kind of moment he'd faced at the choosing ceremony. Only this time, there would be no taking it back. Whatever he said next would determine the course of all our lives. There is something you should know, he said slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. Something I should have told you weeks ago, before the choosing ceremony, before I made the biggest mistake of my life. My heart stopped. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Not like this, not in front of them. But then he turned to face Sienna and her father, and his voice rang clear and strong. Vera is my true mate, chosen by fate, bound by the Moon Goddess, and she's carrying my children. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Sienna's face went white, then red, cycling through emotions too fast to track. Her father's expression turned to stone, dangerous and cold. And Demon stood there, shoulders back, finally, choosing to stand beside his mate instead of his political convenience, even if it might cost him everything. The silence stretched like a living thing, suffocating and dense. Sienna looked like she'd been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed several times before sound finally emerged. A strangled, disbelieving laugh. You're joking. This is some kind of test, isn't it? To see if I'm truly loyal. If I'll stand by you even when it's not a joke, Demon said quietly. I'm sorry, Sienna. You deserve better than this. Better than me. Better than... She took a step back, shaking her head. We were mated 3 days ago, Demon. 3 days. In front of the entire pack. Before the moon goddess herself. And you're telling me you had a true mate all along? That you knew and chose me anyway? The Alliance? Don't you dare. Her voice cracked, and I saw tears gathering in her eyes despite her rage. Don't you dare make this about politics. You chose me. You kissed me. You made vows, and all that time you were... She looked at me with something between hatred and anguish. With her? It was one night, I said, finding my voice despite the churning in my stomach, before the ceremony. He didn't know about the babies when he chose you. Oh, how noble. Sienna's laugh was bitter as poison. One night is all it took to destroy everything I thought I had. One night with an Omega nobody. Enough. Demon's alpha command rolled through the room like thunder. You will not speak to her that way. This isn't Vera's fault, isn't it? Rowan Blackthorn spoke for the first time, his voice dangerously soft. Your true mate conveniently appears just as my daughter is about to become Luna. She carries your children, allegedly. And suddenly you're ready to throw away 3 generations of alliance? Forgive me, Alpha, but that seems remarkably convenient timing. The implication hung heavy that I'd planned this, seduced Demon deliberately to steal Sienna's position. The timing was fate's choice, not mine, Demon said coldly. And I'll thank you not to question the integrity of my mate, your mate. Rowan's eyes were chips of ice. You mean the Omega with no family? No lineage, nothing to offer this pack except a convenient pregnancy? How do we even know the children are yours? I flinched as if he'd struck me. The accusation cut deeper than any physical wound. The suggestion that I'd lie about something so sacred, that I'd trap an alpha with false children. Demon moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was across the room, the next he had Rowan pressed against the wall, forearm across the older wolf's throat. Say that again! He growled, his eyes flashing full silver. Question my mate's honor one more time, and alpha or not, I will end you. Demon, stop! I tried to stand, forgetting about my injured leg. Pain shot through me and I gasped, swaying dangerously. Margot caught me, steadying me with surprising strength for her age. Everyone calm down before someone does something they'll regret. Alpha, release him. Now! For a moment, I thought Demon wouldn't obey. His wolf was too close to the surface, too enraged by the insult to his mate, but then he stepped back, chest heaving, hands still clenched into fists. Rowan straightened his clothes with precise, controlled movements. You've made your position clear, Alpha. As have I. My daughter and I will be leaving Silvercrest territory immediately. The alliance between our families is dissolved, effective immediately. Our trade agreements, our military cooperation, all of it, finished. Father, Sienna started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. We're leaving, Sienna. We'll return to our own lands, where at least we have some dignity left. He looked at Demon with cold contempt. I hope she's worth it, Alpha. I hope when the rogues come in force, and they will come, you'll remember what you traded for a pregnant Omega and her convenient claims. He swept out of the room. Sienna remained a moment longer, staring at Demon with wounded eyes. I loved you, she said softly. Since we were children, I loved you. And you couldn't even be honest enough to tell me the truth before humiliating me in front of the entire pack. Sienna. Demon reached for her, but she jerked away. Don't. Just don't. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and what I saw in her face wasn't hatred, but something closer to pity. I hope you know what you're getting into. Being Luna isn't romance and mate bonds. It's politics and sacrifice and putting the pack before everything. Even your own happiness. If you can't handle that, then maybe you're not as convenient as you seem. She left with her head high, and I felt the weight of her words settle over me like a shroud. She was right, wasn't she? I had no training for this, no preparation for being Luna. I was an Omega who cleaned kitchens and ran forgotten patrol routes. How was I supposed to lead a pack? Well, Margot said into the heavy silence, that went about as badly as it could have. Demon turned to face me, and the naked vulnerability in his expression made my breath catch. I'm sorry. I should have handled that better, should have told Sienna privately, should have chosen me from the beginning. I finished quietly. Should have trusted the mate bond instead of political convenience. Yes. The word came out rough, honest. I was a coward, Vera. I convinced myself I was being responsible, thinking of the pack. But really I was just afraid. Afraid of what choosing you would cost. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of admitting that an Omega could be everything an Alpha needs. And now? I asked. Now that you've blown up your alliance and made me a target for every wolf who thinks I manipulated you. Now that Sienna hates us both and half the pack probably agrees with her. Now, I fight for you. He crossed the room and knelt beside where I sat on Margot's examination table, his hands finding mine with careful reverence. Now, I do what I should have done weeks ago. I claim my mate properly before the pack and the moon goddess. I make sure everyone knows exactly where you stand and exactly what you mean to me. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear over it. Demon, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you, chose wrong, made you feel invisible and worthless when you're anything but. His voice cracked. But if you'll have me, if you'll give me a chance to prove I can be the mate you deserve, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't bother wiping them away. The pack will fight this. Not everyone will accept an Omega Luna. Then they can leave. His voice was hard as iron. You are my mate. My children's mother. Anyone who can't respect that has no place in Silvercrest. The Blackthorns will manage without their alliance. We're strong enough. Smart enough. We'll find new trading partners, new military agreements. He squeezed my hands. But I can't manage without you, Vera. I've tried. And it's killing me. My wolf is going insane. The mate bond feels like it's ripping me apart from the inside, and every moment I'm not with you feels wrong. I looked at Margot, who was watching us with something like satisfaction on her weathered face. What do you think? Am I crazy to believe him? I think you'd be crazy not to, the old healer said. He's finally using the brain the moon goddess gave him. Don't let pride get in the way of happiness, child. Life's too short, and love's too rare. My mother's voice whispered through memory one last time. Being invisible isn't the same as being worthless. Sometimes the quietest hearts hold the loudest truths. Maybe it was time to stop being quiet. Time to claim my worth, my place, my mate. Okay, I whispered. But you have to promise me something. Anything. No more hiding. No more political convenience over honesty. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, as true mates, as partners, as equals. I took a shaky breath. And you have to accept that I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know how to be Luna. I'm going to stumble and mess up and probably embarrass you in front of important wolves. You could never embarrass me. Demon rose and cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away my tears. You're the bravest person I know, Vera. You survived being overlooked your whole life and still managed to be kind. You carried our children alone, prepared to raise them without me because you thought it was what they needed. You held off 3 rogues long enough for help to arrive. That's not weakness. That's strength most wolves will never have. Then he kissed me, and it felt like coming home, like that first night in the forest. Only better because this time there was no hesitation, no fear, no wondering if it was real. The mate bond blazed between us, finally acknowledged, finally accepted. And I felt his relief and love and desperate need through it, like they were my own emotions. When we finally broke apart, Margot was smiling. About time, she muttered. Now, the practical matters. Vera needs rest and her leg needs time to heal. Alpha, I assume you're serious about the protection? Deadly serious. Demon's expression hardened. The rogues targeted her specifically. Until we know why and neutralize the threat, She doesn't go anywhere without guards. Then I suggest the guest suite in the Alpha Wing, Margot said. Not your personal quarters. That would be inappropriate until you're properly mated, but close enough that you can protect her. And over the next 3 weeks, my world transformed so completely, I sometimes felt like I was living someone else's life. Demon announced our true mate bond to the pack 2 days after the confrontation with Sienna. The pack meeting was tense, with clear division in the crowd. The older wolves, the ones who valued tradition and the sanctity of mate bonds, supported Demon's choice. Many of the younger wolves, especially those close to Sienna's family, were openly skeptical. But when Demon stood before them, one hand protectively over my still small bump, and spoke about fate and duty and choosing love over politics, something shifted. Not everyone accepted it. There were still whispers, still wolves who looked at me with suspicion or resentment, but enough did. Enough to matter. Hannah became my unexpected ally, teaching me things about pack politics and Luna duties that I'd never needed to know as an Omega. You need to visit the families, she'd say, pulling me out of my comfortable isolation. Show them you care, that you're not just some Omega who got lucky. So I visited. I brought food to the families affected by the rogue attacks. I sat with Marcus Whitepaw's widow and held her hand while she cried. I helped in the nursery, playing with pups while their parents worked. Slowly, painfully, I began to build relationships. Not as invisible Vera, but as the woman who would stand beside their alpha. The twins grew inside me, my stomach swelling week by week. Margot monitored them closely, assuring me they were strong and healthy despite the stress. They're fighters, she'd say with a knowing smile, just like their mother. Demon was everything. Attentive without being smothering, protective without being possessive. He moved me into the guest suite as Margot suggested, but he spent hours there anyway, talking about pack business, planning for the babies, or just sitting quietly while I rested. The mate bond grew stronger each day, weaving us together until I couldn't imagine life without him. The rogue threat intensified. More attacks, more violence, always testing their borders. Demon scouts finally identified the leader, a massive wolf named Kale, who'd been exiled from his own pack years ago and had been building an army ever since. He wanted Silvercrest territory, wanted to overthrow Demon and claim everything for himself. He knows about you, Nora told us grimly during a war council. One of the captured rogues confirmed it. Kyle thinks the pregnancy makes Demon vulnerable. Distracted, he's planning something big. Let him try, Demon said, his voice cold with fury. We'll be ready. But ready or not, when the attack came, it was devastating. They hit just before dawn, 2 months after Demon had claimed me publicly. I was 6 months pregnant, my stomach round and heavy with the twins who never seemed to stop moving. The alarm howls woke me from restless sleep, and I heard Demon shouting orders in the hallway. He burst into my room, already half-dressed in combat gear. Stay here. Lock the door. Guards are posted outside. Don't open for anyone but me or Garrett. Demon. Please, Vera. He pulled me close, one hand splaying over my swollen stomach. Keep them safe. Keep yourself safe. That's all I ask. Then he was gone, and I was left alone with fear and the sound of battle drawing closer. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. I heard fighting, heard screams, heard the crashes and thuds of wolves in combat. My guards, 2 young but capable warriors named Jesse and Maya, kept their posts, but I could see their fear. This wasn't a skirmish, this was war. When the door finally splintered inward, I screamed, but it wasn't rogues. It was Garrett, bleeding from a gash across his ribs, his eyes wild. We need to move you. Now. They've breached the pack house. Where's Demon? Fighting Kale. He'll hold them off, but we need to get you somewhere safe. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. Jesse and Maya fell in around us, weapons ready. We made it halfway down the corridor before they appeared. 5 rogues, bigger and meaner than the ones who'd tried to take me before. Garrett shifted immediately, his copper wolf placing himself between me and the threat. Jesse and Maya did the same, 3 wolves against 5 with me trapped in the middle. The battle was brutal. I watched Jesse go down, his throat torn open. Maya fought viciously, taking down one rogue before another caught her from behind. And Garrett, brave, loyal Garrett, was bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing, still protecting me. "Run!" he snarled, his wolf's voice distorted. "Get to the safe room." But I couldn't leave him. Couldn't leave them to die for me. Something inside me shifted, some instinct older than thought. I felt power surge through the mate bond. Demon's power, offered freely through our connection. My wolf rose with a strength I'd never felt before, and when I shifted, I was larger than I'd ever been. Still small by warrior standards, but faster, fiercer. Driven by a mother's desperate need to protect. I tore into the rogues with everything I had. Claws and teeth and fury, fighting not as an Omega but as a Luna defending her pack. One rogue fell, then another. The survivors scattered, and suddenly Garrett and I were standing in a hallway full of bodies, both of us panting and bleeding but alive. "You shifted," Garrett said, sounding dazed. "You're pregnant and you shifted." "The babies are fine." I could feel them, still moving, still safe despite everything. "Where's Demon?" "This way." We found him in the great hall, locked in combat with the largest wolf I'd ever seen, Kale. It had to be. They were both covered in blood, both limping, both refusing to yield. Around them, pack wolves fought rogues in a dozen smaller battles. The beautiful hall transformed into a war zone. I saw Demon stumble, saw Kale's jaws closing toward his throat. And something in me snapped. I didn't think. I just moved, throwing myself between them, taking Kale's bite meant for my mate. Pain. White-hot, agonizing pain as teeth sank into my shoulder. But I'd bought Demon a second, and a second was all he needed. He surged forward, catching Kale by the throat, and I heard the distinctive crack of vertebrae snapping. The rogue leader fell, dead before he hit the ground, and with his death, the fight went out of his followers. They scattered, fleeing into the dawn, leaving behind their dead and wounded. I collapsed, my vision graying at the edges. Strong hands caught me. Demon shifted back to human form, his face streaked with tears and blood. "No, no, no, Vera, stay with me. Margot, I'm okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if that was true. "The babies are moving," Margot said, appearing seemingly from nowhere. Her hands were gentle but efficient as she examined my shoulder. "You foolish, brave girl, shifting while pregnant, throwing yourself at a rogue twice your size. Is she?" Demon couldn't finish the question. "She'll live. So will the babies. Though they'll probably come early after this." Margot's expression softened. "You did well, Luna. Saved your mate. Defended your pack. No one will question your worth after today." The weeks that followed were a blur of healing and rebuilding. The pack had lost 7 wolves in the attack, including young Jesse, who died protecting me. We mourned them properly, honored their sacrifice, and I made sure their families knew they'd mattered. My shoulder healed, leaving a scar I wore with quiet pride. The babies did come early. Just a week later, my water broke in the middle of a council meeting, sending Demon into a panic that would have been funny if I wasn't in labor. The birth was hard, but not impossible. Margot guided me through it while Demon held my hand and whispered encouragements. And when it was over, we had 2 perfect babies, a boy with his father's dark hair and silver eyes, and a girl with my blonde hair and Demon's strong features. "What should we name them?" Demon asked, cradling his daughter with a gentleness that made my heart ache. I looked at my son, this tiny, perfect creature who'd changed everything. For the boy, Marcus. After the wolf who was always kind to me, who died protecting our pack. And for the girl, I thought of my mother, of her gentle wisdom and fierce love. Elena. It was my mother's name. Marcus and Elena Ashford, Demon said softly, future of Silvercrest Pack. 2 months later, we held the proper mating ceremony, not the political spectacle Demon's first ceremony had been, but something simpler and more sacred. Under the full moon, before the pack we'd fought to protect, Demon claimed me as his mate, and I claimed him as mine. When he placed his mark on my throat, the mating bite that would bind us forever, I felt the mate bond lock into place completely. No more uncertainty, no more doubt. Just love and partnership and the absolute certainty that we belonged together. My Luna, he whispered against my skin. My mate. My everything. My Alpha, I whispered back. My mate. My home. The pack howled their approval, the sound echoing through the forest, our territory, our home. And as I stood there with my mate beside me and my children sleeping peacefully in Margot's arms, I finally understood what my mother had meant all those years ago. Being invisible had never made me worthless. I'd always carried truths worth hearing, strength worth recognizing, love worth claiming. It had just taken time and the right person to see it. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Luna Vera Ashford, mother to Marcus and Elena, mate to Alpha Demon, and protector of Silvercrest Pack. And I had never felt more seen, more valued, or more completely, impossibly whole. The moon shone silver overhead, blessing us with light. And in that light, I finally allowed myself to believe what the bond had been whispering all along. I was exactly where I was meant to be, exactly who I was meant to become, and it was enough. Moon Goddess. It was more than enough. It was everything.